Have you ever wondered how someone can be treated as invisible in a place where million-dollar decisions are made every day? What if, in a matter of minutes, the game turned around in a way no one expected? Stay with me until the end, because what you're about to discover might surprise you more than you imagine. It was just another seemingly ordinary morning at one of the city's largest banks. One of those where the marble floors reflect power. The suits cost more than many salaries, and the air seems to carry a constant sense of superiority. Employees came and went, customers waited to be served, and everything followed the routine, until the doors opened differently. The arrival of that man did not go unnoticed. A well-known billionaire surrounded by bodyguards, firm steps, a cold gaze, the posture of someone who believes the world runs to the rhythm of his money. For him, that bank was not a neutral space. It was just another territory where his influence should speak louder. As he walked through the lobby, he could feel the atmosphere change. Conversations ceased, curious glances appeared, some even admiring. After all, when someone with so much power enters the scene, many people believe they need to shrink back. But it was precisely in this setting that something almost imperceptible happened, something he didn't even notice at first. Behind the reception desk was a black woman, serene posture, attentive gaze, dressed simply and professionally. To many, just another employee. To him, someone who didn't even deserve a second glance. Have you ever been through this? Have you ever felt judged before even opening your mouth? The look of contempt wasn't expressed in words at that moment, but it was there, silent, laden with prejudice and arrogance. In his mind, the hierarchy was clear. Those with money give orders, those without obey. And that woman, in his eyes, occupied the lowest possible place on that imaginary scale. A receptionist, invisible, underestimated. The billionaire walked to the counter as if expecting automatic submission. He didn't ask for information, didn't greet anyone, didn't bother to hide his impatience. He believed his presence was enough to open doors, cut lines, and command respect. Meanwhile, the woman remained calm, observing every gesture, every unspoken word, every judgmental glance. There began a silent tension, almost imperceptible to those who don't pay attention to details, but powerful enough to change everything. The atmosphere seemed to hold its breath. Some employees sensed something was amiss, others pretended not to notice. And the self-assured billionaire remained convinced he was in complete control of the situation. What he didn't know, and perhaps had never considered, was that he was about to face the biggest power reversal of the day. One of those stories of reverse humiliation that only makes sense when the truth comes out. What you're about to discover isn't just about money, status, or positions. It's about how superficial judgments can blind even the most powerful. It's about an underestimated black woman, an arrogant man, and a perfect setting for a social upheaval that no one there expected. Stay with me, because from this moment on, every word, every gesture, and every silence begins to reveal that reception concealed much more than it seemed at first glance. And as this scene unfolds before our eyes, perhaps something inside you has already been awakened. Because stories like this aren't just about a bank, a billionaire, or an underestimated black woman. They touch on experiences that many of us have carried in silence. If this topic resonates with you, if at any point in your life you've been judged by your appearance, your position, or what others thought you were, leave a comment below about what has touched you the most so far. Sometimes, sharing an experience helps others realize they're not alone. If this narrative is captivating you, if you feel this type of story needs to be told, consider liking the video. This simple gesture shows that content about poetic justice, reverse humiliation, and social upheavals deserves more attention. Your participation here is what makes this channel grow and reach more people who also need to reflect on respect, dignity, and empathy. Subscribing to the channel is a way of saying, I want to keep listening to stories that provoke, move, and make you think. Each subscription strengthens this community that is slowly forming, united by accounts that reveal uncomfortable but necessary truths. And the more people who join, the further this message will reach. Because what's happening now in that reception area isn't over yet. The silence that hangs in the air, the exchanged glances, the overconfidence of those who believe they're on top, all of that will still change. And the truth, when it begins to reveal itself, rarely asks permission. It simply arrives, changes the course of history, and leaves marks that no one there will forget. What happens next doesn't come with a warning, nor with a dramatic soundtrack announcing that something serious is about to happen. It's more subtle than that. It's human, uncomfortable, and precisely for that reason, so easy to recognize. The billionaire leans slightly over the counter, impatient, and completely ignores the instructions given to him politely. He doesn't listen because, in his mind, there's no reason to listen to someone he's already decided is unimportant. His voice begins to rise, first in a tone of irony, then in impatience, until it reaches the point where it ceases to be mere rudeness and becomes public humiliation. The words aren't necessarily aggressive at first, but they carry a cruel weight. They question her ability, her place there, the level of service. He speaks as if he's teaching a lesson, as if he's doing that black woman a favor by reminding her of what, according to him, her proper place should be. And all this happens in front of other people. Waiting customers, employees pretending to look at screens, security guards remaining motionless. The entire environment seems to shrink. This is the kind of silence that isn't empty. It's a heavy, awkward, almost deafening silence. No one intervenes, no one confronts, because there's an invisible dynamic there, made of fear, hierarchy, and convenience. Confronting a billionaire requires courage, and courage doesn't always appear when the risk seems too high. So what's left is a mission, and a mission also hurts. She remains there, on the other side of the counter, listening to every word. She doesn't lower her head, but she also doesn't react with anger. There's something powerful in that posture, a calmness that isn't submission, but a choice. Inside, much is happening, thoughts, memories, perhaps even an old pain that recognizes itself in that scene. Because humiliations are rarely isolated, they connect with other experiences, other sideways glances, other situations in which someone has been reduced to less than they are. The billionaire continues. He believes he is in control, that his decisions shape destinies, that his presence should inspire gratitude. In his worldview, respect comes from money, and those who don't display visible signs of power automatically lose value. This mentality has shaped his decisions for years, opened doors, built empires, but it has also created blind spots. And it is in these blind spots that the hidden truth often lurks. Some people around begin to realize that the scene is going too far. A manager exchanges a quick glance with another employee. Someone clears their throat, nervously, but nothing happens. The silence remains complicit. And this further deepens the emotional impact of the moment, because it's not just the humiliation itself, it's the fact that it's passively accepted by the environment. Now I want to delve even deeper into this subject, because this type of situation isn't just about racism, arrogance, or abuse of power. It's about transformation, about how certain journeys require overcoming moments of injustice to reveal something greater. There's an invisible tension growing there, fueled by the misguided certainty on one side and the silent conscience on the other. And when these two forces meet, something always changes. The woman listens, responds only when necessary, and maintains a professional demeanor. Every word she speaks is measured. Every gesture is firm, not because she is afraid, but because she understands the impact of each choice at that moment. Sometimes the greatest strength lies in not reacting impulsively, but in allowing reality itself to take care of the revelations. And that reality has already begun to move behind the scenes. The billionaire, without realizing it, is building his own moral downfall right there, phrase by phrase. He doesn't know that every ignoring glance, every raised tone, every gesture of contempt is being recorded, not only by the people around him, but by the very logic of the situation, because there are moments when power changes hands without prior announcement. It just happens. This scene marks a point of no return. Something has been said that cannot be unsaid. Something has been exposed that can no longer be hidden. And the impact of this will not be immediate, but it will be profound. The atmosphere feels it. The mood changes. There is a silent expectation in the air, as if everyone senses that this story still holds revelations that go far beyond that counter. Before moving on, write a simple sentence in the comments, just so I know this resonated with you too. This makes sense to me. There is something profoundly disconcerting when arrogance meets absolute calm. It's almost like watching two opposing forces occupying the same space, but playing completely different games, while the billionaire continues talking, reinforcing his status, citing figures, influence, contacts, and decisions that, according to him, can change destinies in seconds. The woman remains exactly where she is. Her posture doesn't change. Her voice doesn't tremble. Her gaze doesn't wander. She listens, answers only the essentials, and doesn't try to prove anything. This choice, so simple on the outside, carries a power he cannot comprehend. For someone used to seeing people over-explaining themselves, apologizing without guilt, or trying to please to avoid conflict, that attitude seems almost like a challenge. But it isn't. It's clarity. She knows who she is, she knows where she is, and she knows she doesn't need to convince anyone at that moment. There's a huge difference between silence and submission, and she masters that difference with a naturalness that's starting to become unsettling. The billionaire realizes his words aren't having the desired effect. There's no rush on the other side of the counter, no visible fear. There's none of that urgency typical of someone who feels small in the face of power. This irritates him even more. His mindset was shaped to function in environments where money accelerates everything, conversations, decisions, concessions. But there, something is holding him back. And when control slips, arrogance tends to rise to the surface. She, on the other hand, remains firm, polite without irony, without direct confrontation. Each answer is objective, almost technical. She doesn't over-explain, doesn't ask for understanding, doesn't try to soften his discomfort. This economy of words begins to generate something new in the atmosphere: strangeness. Employees exchange quick, almost imperceptible glances. There is a contained nervousness, as if everyone sensed that this scene doesn't follow the usual script. A manager, who'd been observing from a distance, looks away when the billionaire offers implicit support. He pretends to check something on his cell phone, adjusts his tie, takes a step back. Small gestures say a lot. Backstage is rarely silent, and even when no one speaks, body language betrays them. Something doesn't fit. The woman at reception doesn't react like someone who should be intimidated, and that raises questions. Now I want to delve even deeper into this subject, because it's precisely in these almost invisible details that the truth begins to emerge. The journey of this scene isn't about who speaks loudest, but about who understands the moment. She makes internal decisions as everything unfolds: when to speak, when to be silent, when to look into someone's eyes, when to simply listen. Each choice carries intention. Every second begins to work in her favor, even if no one consciously realizes it. The billionaire insists on relying on what has always worked for him: status, bought authority, the idea that his presence should generate automatic obedience. But the impact of these tools diminishes when they encounter someone who isn't playing the same game. Her calmness disarms, not through confrontation, but through contrast. It's as if reality is slowly adjusting, preparing something bigger. Some clients are starting to notice, not what he says, but how she reacts, or rather, how she doesn't react. There's a serenity there that doesn't match the role he's assigned her, and this generates collective discomfort. Because when an internal narrative begins to fail, the mind tries to find explanations. Why doesn't she defend herself? Why doesn't she call a superior? Why doesn't she show fear? The answer hasn't come yet, but curiosity is growing. The manager, now visibly tense, avoids any gesture that could escalate the situation. He knows something, not everything, but enough not to intervene rashly. This kind of hesitation is not common in rigid corporate environments, and when it appears, it usually indicates that there are hidden layers beneath the surface. The woman remains there, steadfast as one who knows the inner workings of what's happening. There's no rush to reveal anything. There's no need to interrupt the flow of events. Sometimes the greatest revelation happens when you allow the other person to go too far, because it's in that excess that the truth becomes impossible to ignore. The billionaire, without realizing it, begins to expose himself. Each sentence reaffirms a limited worldview. Each attempt at imposition reinforces a mentality that confuses respect with fear. And as he speaks, the invisible balance of the situation begins to slowly tip to the other side, not through brute force, but through consistency. The atmosphere senses this change, even without fully understanding why. There's a growing, almost physical expectation, as if everyone is waiting for a turning point that hasn't yet fully materialized. Something is about to move from the realm of assumptions into the territory of revelations. And when that happens, nothing remains the same. Before moving any further down this journey, write a simple sentence in the comments, just to mark your presence at this moment. I'm on this journey too. There's a specific moment when the atmosphere changes. It's not noise, it's not an announcement, it's not someone raising their voice. It's an almost invisible detail, but one that completely alters the course of the story. The manager, who until then had avoided any clear movement, approaches with measured steps. His body is rigid, his gaze careful, the posture of someone measuring every second before speaking. He doesn't look at the billionaire first. He looks at her, and this simple gesture already carries more meaning than any speech made up to that point. The billionaire realizes the situation too late. He's still trapped in his own narrative, convinced he's in control, when the manager addresses the woman with a respect that completely clashes with the scene constructed up to that point. The tone shifts. The choice of words changes, and without fanfare, without spectacle, the truth begins to emerge, not as a shout, but as an inevitable realization. She's not just the woman behind the counter. She's not just the receptionist he decided to dehumanize to assert power. She's the bank's regional director, the person responsible for strategic decisions, sensitive contracts, approvals involving sums of money he knows very well. She's the one who participates behind the scenes where fortunes are made or lost. And at that moment, the entire mental structure, the billionaire built to feel superior to everyone, collapses. The impact is immediate, yet silent. His face changes. There are no words, no instant apology. There is only the brutal realization that the humiliation he tried to inflict now returns with full force. The hidden truth, the one no one announced, imposes itself, and it asks no permission. Now I want to delve even deeper into this subject, because this moment isn't just about revealing a position or a visible shift in power. It's about mindset, about how decisions made based on prejudice create invisible traps. He realizes in seconds that everything he said is recorded in the memory of whoever truly holds authority there. Every gesture of contempt, every snide remark, every look of superiority now takes on a different weight, a weight that cannot be erased. The atmosphere reacts in an almost imperceptible, yet collective way. The employees relax their shoulders, as if a knot has been untied. Customers exchange discreet glances, trying to process what they have just witnessed. The woman, now clearly recognized as she always was, maintains the same posture, the same calm. There is no vengeful smile, No unnecessary display, just consistency. And that's perhaps what most destabilizes the billionaire, because he expected confrontation, he expected explicit revenge, he expected some kind of equivalent humiliation. But what he receives is professionalism, a silent reminder that real power doesn't need to prove anything. He understands in that instant that he has lost something that no amount of money can buy, dignity in that space. The transfer of power doesn't happen with applause, but with embarrassment. Now he feels the weight of the stares. Now he measures his words. Arrogance gives way to forced caution. And this reversal reveals something greater. The impact of choices made when one believes oneself to be above the consequences. This scene doesn't just transform the dynamics of that bench. It marks an internal journey. For him, a clash between the image he had built of himself and the reality he had just faced. For her, the confirmation that she didn't need to defend herself, only to exist firmly until the truth revealed itself. For the observer, a lesson that transcends the moment and settles in as a reflection. Nothing more needs to be said at that moment, but everything has already been understood. The billionaire's future decisions, in that bank, and perhaps beyond, now carry an uncomfortable memory, a clear reminder that status is fragile when based on contempt, and that true authority often circulates discreetly, waiting only for the right moment to reveal itself. The atmosphere remains tense, as if everyone knows that this is not the end of the story, only the point where the masks fall. Because when the revelation happens, it doesn't conclude anything. It opens new paths, exposes truths, and prepares the ground for consequences that still need to unfold. Moving on, write in the comments one word that defines this moment for you. Revelation. After the silence settles, something begins to reorganize itself inside each person who witnessed that scene. It's no longer about positions, nor about who entered escorted or who was behind a counter. It's about dignity, about what remains when status falls, when money loses its voice, and when the truth imposes itself without asking permission. Her posture remains the same, firm, serene, almost didactic, without needing to explain anything. His, on the other hand, now carries a weight that wasn't there before. A discomfort that doesn't come from the fear of losing money, but from the shock of facing his own image reflected in a raw way. There's a silent lesson in this contrast. While he built his identity on numbers, influence, and control, she built her presence on consistency, preparation, and respect. And when these two mindsets meet, the outcome doesn't depend on who shouts louder, but on who maintains their identity when no one is applauding. True power in that instant didn't need to shout, didn't need to impose itself, didn't need to humiliate in return. It simply stood tall. Now I want to delve even deeper into this subject, because stories like this impact us not only through the shock of the revelation, but also through the mirror they hold up to us. How many decisions are made every day based on appearance? How many times is someone reduced to a label before even being heard? There is a silent mentality that associates value with external symbols, and this mentality exacts a high price, not only from those who suffer prejudice, but also from those who perpetrate it. The billionaire emerges from that situation different from how he entered it. Even if he tries to maintain his composure, something has been broken inside. The absolute certainty of superiority has suffered a crack. And when that happens, two choices present themselves. Ignore the impact and continue repeating patterns, or allow that experience to transform into learning. The story doesn't tell us which path he will follow, but it makes it clear that encounters with truth rarely pass without leaving their mark. She, in turn, doesn't need to change anything. She doesn't need to prove, justify, or reaffirm who she is. Her journey isn't validated by that specific moment, but by everything that brought her there. Even so, that scene carries a greater meaning because it exposes a truth that many people experience daily, Being underestimated doesn't diminish who you are, it only reveals who the other person chooses to be at that moment. Poetic justice isn't found in pure and simple reverse humiliation. It lies in the inevitable learning that arises when pride crumbles. It's in the silent impact of realizing that money doesn't buy dignity, doesn't buy character, and doesn't replace humanity. And perhaps that's why this story is as unsettling as it is educational, because it doesn't offer a comfortable ending, only a reflection that continues to resonate. The bank's environment continues at its own pace, but something there will never be exactly the same again. Future decisions will carry that memory. Looks will be more careful, words will be more measured, and even if no one speaks explicitly about what happened again, it becomes part of the invisible backstage that shapes behaviors. That's how transformative experiences work, silently but profoundly. This is not just a story about exposed prejudice. It's a story about choices, about how each gesture builds or destroys bridges, about how hidden truth always finds a way to emerge. And when it emerges, it doesn't offer revenge, it offers awareness. From there, each person decides what to do with what they've learned. What's most interesting is realizing that the greatest victory in that scene isn't in who left embarrassed, but in who remained whole, in who didn't need to become something different to be respected, in who trusted their own journey and allowed reality to take care of the revelations in due time. That's a kind of strength that doesn't show up in bank statements, but changes destinies. And as this story continues to unfold, other layers begin to emerge, other silent consequences come into play, and new decisions are made from this turning point. Because when dignity prevails, it doesn't end anything. It opens space for something even greater to be revealed. If this reflection also resonated with you, leave a simple comment below to mark this moment. This makes sense to me. If you've made it this far, it's because this story resonated with you on some level. Perhaps through reflection, perhaps through emotion, perhaps because at some point you've found yourself in this same position, being judged, underestimated, or silenced. If this message found a space within you, it's worth continuing this journey together. Subscribing to the channel is a simple way to say that this type of content makes sense to you and that these conversations deserve to continue. If you'd like, leave a comment saying you read to the end. It can be something simple like, "This message was for me," or any phrase that represents how you felt listening to this story. These comments aren't just numbers. They show that there are people on the other side, living, feeling, and reflecting along with you. And if you felt that connection during the video, a like helps keep this kind of storytelling alive here. It's a silent but powerful way to support stories that provoke thought, teach, and leave a mark. There's a video over here that complements this topic and delves even deeper into these reflections. Click and continue reading there.